What up? Welcome back. Y'all are here with Just Checking In, y'all's favorite podcast to listen to at this point with your two favorite people. We doing good things and we colorful today. So it is, as always, yours truly, everybody's uncle, Uncle Don Don. And I'm here with my other virtual half, my good brother Qualls, aka
Mr. Qualified, how y'all doing?
as we teased that last time, it's Women's History Month, so we just wanted to just check in with some dope women. So, Qualls, who we got for today?
Absolutely. I will let her introduce herself, but before we get in to all of that, I just want to say, very excited to have this person on the show. She has been a fan, an audience member, if you will, has giving good feedback about the show, has let us know that we're doing good things. So excited to have her on for this conversation. But yeah, I will let her introduce herself and then we'll get into a little bit about what she's doing now, the inspiration behind it, and yeah. So let the people know.
Right. So I'm academic, so don't get on me about my introduction. But my name is Jasmine Godwin. I'm a fourth-year doctoral student. I study human development and family science, and I also look at Black families, colorism, and relationships. So that's kind of like my main focus. I look at some of those intersectionalities and nuances within Black communities. I'm excited to be here. I'm a little nervous, my first podcast, but I'm really excited about this conversation, and thank you guys for having me.
Of course, no problem. No need to be nervous. I promise you, we just here. We ain't nobody. We just talking. It ain't nothing crazy. But no, I'm always curious, especially as somebody who has thought about and considered going to get a PhD, but just also somebody who knows what that journey at least can look like, not what it feels like, but what it looks like. What was your inspiration behind not only going to get the degree, but also why you chose to focus on like the study emphasis that you did?
Yeah, so for me, I really didn't want a PhD. I kind of was like voluntold what was happening in my life. I wanted a master's degree, but I had like other Black women who believed in me. And they were like, yeah, you're not getting a master's. Like, you're about to do this master's PhD. So I said, okay, yes, ma'am. And so I'm here now. This is my fourth year out of five. So I'm almost done. And in undergrad, I studied Black families and kind of the influence that racism and racial socialization influence families. And so that was my introduction into colorism. My advisor here at Mizzou, she's like a dog when you look at colorism. She's like a huge person in our field. And she kind of put me on track to like open my horizons to things. So that's when I started thinking about Black fathers, motherhood, femininity, respectability, politics, some of those things, and how it influences daughters.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's I definitely get the voluntold part. Although it has been some time since I've graduated with my master's, I have people to this day that are still very much like, yeah, at some point you gonna get it. We just know you gonna get it eventually. And I'm like, okay. I mean, maybe not. I don't know. But Donald, as a fellow academic, is there anything about that track or just anything about her area of study that has intrigued you or that
all,
questions for you?
all of the above. So for background, you said Black families, the socialization of all of these things. The program existed at Mizzou at some point, Mizzou Black Men's Initiative,
Yep.
and I was one of the program directors and instructors over that. So we were talking about Black men, masculinity, how we've been socialized in society, and after me, that would have some ripple effect into the Black family. But I'm curious to know, what was the thing that got you interested in wanting to start that? I know you were voluntold and had the good community support, but what was the thing that said, you know what, this is what I want to know more about?
We did a study and it was just broadly on family, but I kept hearing people talk about how their fathers, their brothers, their guy cousins kept telling them things about who they were supposed to be as women. And to me, that was an issue. And then I started thinking about my life and some of the Black men in my life and things that even my father has said. Love you, Jerome, if you hear this, but some of the things that he has said to me as well. And I'm like, I think I have something here. So I started, doing my deep dive as we do, a little literature review, and I couldn't really find much about this topic. So I was like, okay, I really have something. So I started doing more research. We did another study. We actually went to Kenya and South Africa, and we have data with participants there. And so I was like, I think this is what I'm passionate about. And then, a little brag, NSF, National Science Foundation, I ended up putting a application for that, and I got the grant for that. And so that's kind of what propelled me into this field.
Okay, round of applause for the grant. There we go. Come on.
No, that is truly amazing. How do you feel? I feel like I have to ask every PhD candidate this. So, how do you feel about research, or what's your relationship with research? Because I feel like that's my biggest like that's the biggest thing. I'm like, I don't think I want to do all that. That's why I can't guarantee I'm gonna go get this degree for my community of folks that is rooting for me. I appreciate the support, I do, but that research is not calling my name, and I don't think we see eye to eye. But how you feel about the research aspect of things?
We have a toxic relationship. It's like she's good to me sometime, and then it's just like dogging me out the next moment. So it like balances. It's fulfilling because you like get to see, like I said, I was in Kenya, South Africa. I get to see different parts of the world. And I feel like there's not a lot of careers where you could just take off 2 weeks, a month, and say I'm going to Africa and you're not getting fired. Like you have the freedom to just explore and be like a learner of the world. So I love that. And because I do qualitative research, I really do interviews and focus groups and like sister circles, and I get to speak to people, and I value that. On the other hand, because of the type of research I do, it's not really respected. Qualitative research is not like the top methodology. People look at quantitative research. And I also think because of what I study, I have to fight a lot. Nobody wants to hear about Black fathers and Black girls. Nobody wants to fund that. So it's like really hard, and it's hard to find my motivation sometimes, but I do enjoy it overall. It's rocky.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how do you keep yourself like motivated and in it? Because especially now with where we are in the world, this is not a topic that seems to be something that people will have thumbs up for. But on top of that, it's also just probably not a lot of research on it generally, right? So you already are kind of in early stages of doing great things, and as you mentioned, the quantitative piece of it all. It's like this data is going to look different. So how do you keep going when everything else is kind of meant to be against the grain for you?
Um, my friends, like stuff like last night, just being able to hang out with my friends and they pour into me when I'm feeling empty. And I'm empty a lot. But because I have such good friends who check on me, they have get togethers and they take the pressure off of like, okay, do I have to plan this? That's one less thing I have to do. That helps me so much. Like my relationship with Steven, he's a great friend. Like that helps me. Like stuff like that helps me. Seriously, a little shout out to you. Like you really do. Like friends mean everything to me. And so that helps me. But I will be honest, because I know people want honesty. Like I'm pouring from an empty cup a lot. Like this is hard research to do. And so I do find it challenging, I guess, to find motivation. Yeah.
Yeah, now that's extremely real, and I definitely agree with you on the friend point. I think friendships carry a lot more value than people realize, especially when you have somebody on the journey of getting a PhD, but also just with the things that people go through in life. Like I think the one thing that I'm realizing is like there are so many different type of seasons that people go through, and as a friend, you may not always know the specifics or the full context of what that season is, but you also don't realize how being a good friend might be helping somebody through those seasons. So I definitely get that piece. Speaking to like you pouring from an empty cup and like needing and appreciating those friendships that help fill you up. What aspect of I guess maybe the responsibility you might feel comes from what I've heard women and specifically Black women tend to feel naturally and in general as it pertains to just what they feel like their role in the world has to be. Hence why they, go get these degrees, and hence why they always are taking care of others and feeling like they have to be not the leader, but they have to play this role in their group of friends. I feel like I've heard that a lot from women and Black women. So I was wondering what your kind of like take or perspective is on that. And I hope that question made sense.
I think it's historical. Like, if not me, then who? If I don't do this, who will? If I don't get the degree or take care of the house or do this, who's going to do it? And so I feel like so many people rely on Black women. Society does. You look at politics. Jasmine Crockett, she is like a champion right now. Like, she is putting herself on the line and defending Black people broadly, facing so much ridicule, but that's just what you have to do. And I feel like that's ingrained in us. Like, even if you are not good, you have to be there for other people. And I feel like that is a very dangerous line to cross. But that's the life of Black women in general. Like, it's a strong Black woman archetype. If you're hurting, if you're sad, if your body is wearing out, you don't go get help because you're supposed to be fine until you're in the hospital on your deathbed. And then it's like, I need help. But you've missed all the points. And I see that in myself. It's like when I'm like down bad, I'm like, oh yeah, let's plan a party. Stephen knows me. I'm like, oh yeah, let's have people over. Let me go order 2 pizzas and bring bottles of wine and do it. And inside, I'm not good. So I think it's just ingrained in us. Yeah.
Now I realize that that's a cry for help. So next time you plan something, now I'm gonna check in like, hey, we can still do this, but you all right? You need some? Oh, I got you. Now I'm here and I got you. I'm observing.
If a party is a cry for help, invite me. I will park eight lines for y'all. Speaking of location, we got into like heavy talk right out the bat. Where's home for you?
Oh my God. Home is Connecticut. Please,
Okay.
please don't slander me, y'all. So I'm from Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut. Born and raised there, but I did my undergraduate at Tuskegee University, the illustrious Tuskegee University, located in Tuskegee, Alabama. It's a small HBCU. And now I'm here.
Oh, I feel you right on that one. Okay. Now you were the second person, also second Black person from Connecticut. With love, I didn't even know y'all was up there for real.
Yes, we're everywhere.
She said they up there in the trenches, Donald. She said they up there getting to it. They gets down. They don't play. That's what.
But it's crazy because he's from Wisconsin, so it's just like
I am from Milwaukee, not Wisconsin. Y'all have to get this correct. It's not the same thing.
I mean, when I met Qualls and he was like, "Yeah, I'm from Milwaukee," I was like Wisconsin.
right.
I didn't know we was there either. You learn something new every day.
But like geographically, it makes sense. Like New York is right there, Philly's right there, DC. So it's like Virginia. So they just migrate when it gets too expensive and then they come to Connecticut.
I feel that.
That makes sense. I can sense that. Yeah. I only laugh because we've got into a city war a couple of times. How we got into the city war, I don't really know. I don't think Connecticut was disrespected, but I think she took it as disrespect. And so then the war began.
I'm pretty sure there was some disrespect. Like I would
It
never
wasn't from me. Also, okay, this is a great question. Bring up the beach question, Jazz. We got another fellow Chicago in here.
Okay.
So bring up your question.
Is Chicago known for its beaches? Please be honest.
When you say known for,
Like, did someone say, "Oh yeah, I want to go to Chicago for the beach," or would they say like, "Oh, I want to go to like the West Coast or the East Coast where there's actually beaches"?
She said Chicago don't got real beaches. That's what the statement is.
so here's the thing, right? Chicago does not have real beaches, right? It compared to an actual beach in like Cali or if I'm in Miami, right? Like those are actual beaches. But you people say, "Oh, I want to go to Chicago. I want to go to the lake." Language is important.
Yes.
We don't say the beach because then we got to go through this argument, be ridiculed on how what a beach is, and y'all don't have a beach, and the beach goes to an ocean, and it's like, okay, it's fine. Yes, we can get technical, but you say that you want to go to the lake. The lake happens to have sand, and we have like 26 beaches on the shoreline. So like, or 26 miles of beaches, one of the two. I should know my Chicago facts, but no, Chicago does not have legitimate beaches by definition. So don't beat my ass. But
Like
yeah.
some
We
Chicagoans talking about we got the best beaches. I said, you're a liar. The best beaches?
it
That's
was a
not true.
it was a whole thing. Mind you, I don't know how we got to this conversation from Uno the night that we had it, but it was so it was a lot going on. We was playing Uno and all of a sudden we got into the city war and it was just it
It was
didn't make.
hectic.
But the friend group has people are from a lot of different places. So like I'm from Milwaukee, Jazz from Connecticut. We got people from South Carolina, Mississippi,
Yeah.
Chicago, Virginia. So like it's a lot of different vibes, and everybody just be repping they set basically. So people just be arguing to argue,
Yeah.
yapping, yapping to yap.
The
But
group of certified yappers, like minimum, you're leaving at 3 a.m. Like it's just
okay, you brought up her research again, and Jazz. There was the focus on, and correct me if I'm wrong, black fathers, and uh, is it just their children, or is it specifically daughters?
so it was first it was daughters, but then I was like, really, it was a lot of just girls in the family. So yeah.
Okay, because me and Donald have talked, here and there about whether it be our relationship with our fathers, but really our relationship with our mothers. But I think, I think that dynamic is interesting because, to your point of kind of like the impact that fathers can have or that men can have on their families. Has there been any work, Jazz, like with other men in the family? Have there been aspects of that in your research, even if that hasn't been the main focus of it?
Yeah, so we call them other fathers. That's kind of like the term. I can't remember her name, but I'll try to figure it out. She studies Black boys and she uses like rap as like a methodology. And she calls them other fathers. So they're like any man who's in your life that has an influence in your socialization. So cousins, brothers, uncles, grandparents, people in the community. And people talked about that. It's like the messages they see, like in school, they'll be like we have people who said that the Black guys in school only date the light skinned girls, only date the mixed girls. They don't find them attractive. They've never gone out on a date and they're in college. So like they talk about how they have heard from men what is or learned vicariously, like what is good, what is bad, like what is beautiful, what is not. And so they feel like I never fit into that mold. So like why would anybody else find me attractive? Why would anybody else find me beautiful? And it shapes kind of like how they approach dating and how they approach relationships and like friendship, and colorism even influences friendship, like who you decide to talk to and hang out with. Like it's deep.
Does colorism exist with men? Like, is this a thing?
Hey, yes.
I don't feel like I've experienced it for real. I don't be beefing with the light skins. You know what I'm saying? But like, does it exist? Like, how does it exist? I haven't seen it, me personally.
Colorism is different based off gender. So like for women, it's seen like with beauty, romantically. So it's seen as like a deficit. If you're darker skin, you're devalued, systematically disadvantaged, things like that. But for guys, darker skin is actually like a plus. So it's because you look at some of the like historical tropes of like the Mandingo and like the strong Black guy, and I want this protection, but it's criminality is where it's seen. Darker skinned guys are typically sentenced longer than lighter skinned guys. They're seen as more violent and dangerous. They typically have less education, just based on, they get less harsh sentencing just because of the color of their skin. So, yeah.
Didn't think about it from the criminal perspective, but that makes sense. That tracks. Yeah.
Yeah, and colorism on our side of the conversation definitely leans into it, bleeds into masculinity and how that's validated. So darker skinned men, more masculine person that pops in my head is like Morris Chestnut. But then you get, light skin, this is probably a terrible example. Then you get Drake, right? So it's the opposite end of the spectrum, and now you're kind of seen emasculated in some ways, or you go on the pretty boy trope, and then that's, still like diminishing the male value in some way. So I still see it on our side, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that
Even
is.
in like parenting, like darker skinned boys receive warmer parenting from because their parents know that they're going in a world where they might be arrested more or judged because of the color of their skin. Lighter skinned boys don't receive as warm parenting because their parents know that they're fine. So you might think of like times in your life where you might have felt like you weren't getting that socialization. It's not because they didn't care, but they just felt like you would be all right, where they might pour more into their darker skinned child. But the inverse is true for darker skinned women. So they feel like lighter skinned girls have more of a social value. They can get a husband, they can get the education, so they treat their lighter skinned daughters better compared to their darker skinned daughters.
Dang, it's tough. I don't know.
So,
And and hearing this, a light bulb kind of went off in my head. So based on your experience with your research and just academic program and all of those things, you are at least a daughter yourself. How
yes.
has your research like newly impacted your perspective and point of view as a daughter?
Ooh, I be on Jerome ass, boy. Let me tell you, he he hates to see me coming. Like I don't let up, and he gets so tired of me talking about it. But I'm like, Dad, no, like you're doing this. I don't like this. And you think about it, like my parents, they're divorced, but my mom was like the darkest person my dad ever dated. My dad is probably the color of my phone screen. Like my dad is dark skinned man, and my mom is probably like my complexion or a little lighter. And she was the darkest woman he ever dated. And now he dates a Latina woman who is fair skinned, long curly hair. So I see that stuff. And I'm like, you tell me one thing, but your dating choices don't reflect what you're telling me.
Mhm.
And so I call him out on that all the time. Yeah.
That's what's up. I
And
mean,
is that received well by him?
No. You think a man named Jerome is listening to any of that mess? He ain't listening to nothing. Like, no.
why, why is it all in the name? Which is also funny because I definitely started calling my mom by her first name. I don't know when, but there came a point where, like, not to her face,
Oh,
obviously,
no.
but but in talking about her to other people, she's absolutely Rita. Rita be on one, okay? Rita be tripping sometimes, you know. What
Romy tripping. Romy is crazy. Yeah.
Not wrong. Yeah, I'm so weak. Um, dang, I was about to ask. What do you feel is one of the most? And I know there are a lot. There could be a lot of answers to this. What do you personally feel is one of the most underappreciated things about women? And you can answer specifically for Black women too. That's perfectly fine. But what do you feel like is one of the most underappreciated things for women?
Ooh. Our unwavering support for Black men. I know stuff be looking a little rocky sometimes, but at the base of it, we are always there. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess no, you can't correct me if I'm wrong because this is my personal opinion. I don't think that it's always that way. Like it's not always flipped. Like I don't think Black men always support us as unconditionally as we do for them. That's just my opinion. And so I think that's taken for granted because we've always done that. That is just like an innate thing. You think it's just supposed to happen, but it's like we sacrifice a lot and receive little. I mean, Malcolm X, the most unprotected person is the Black woman. And so I definitely think that being unwavering to you guys is unappreciated.
I
Why
could
do you think it's a lack of reciprocity with that?
I mean, look at how y'all dog us on social media. I mean, the choices in women. Black men are 2 times more likely to date outside of their race. Black women are the least likely to date outside of their race. If we're dating outside of our race, it's because we have literally no other choice. We have exhausted our options because we demographically are the least likely to do so. I think the way that we're talked about in such derogatory ways, Black bitches, you dark skin this, you Black this. It's just so we're looked at for our bodies. I feel like other women actually get some type of respect, but Black women, it's just like, what can I get from her physique? I don't feel like it is like an appreciation for who we really are and what we really can offer. Yeah.
Yeah, I can agree that the in terms of reciprocity, like it's definitely not like unwavering in the way that you all support is. Which like generally speaking, I don't know like for the community of men who do operate like that, I'm not sure where that stems from. I could say that part of it is the socialization. I think a lot of like men are raised in such a different way, especially mentally, than women are, and not to compare that one is better than the other, but I just think the way that men are raised and socialized and taught things, I think within that they are not taught to be able to have the discernment to understand that one, like all women should be respected, but understand like the different things that come with them. I feel like a lot of them are taught to have the narrow-minded approach of just women in general, like whatever I can get, I'll get, and then I'll go on about my day. And I think that it's, I may argue that it's a bit harder for men to unlearn things than women. I mean, as humans, it's difficult to unlearn, but I think because of how men are socialized, I think the things we have to unlearn, like one, we have to accept that we've been taught wrong or we've been taught a way that is archaic. And then we have to have the willingness to be like, okay, I want to change my perception and my perspective for myself so I can act differently. Then there's the work of doing that. That's a lot of steps for niggas. That's a lot of steps and a lot of work for niggas. It's hard because you might even have the people, you might have the men that understand it,
Uh,
but cannot put into action like
uh,
making the change to their approach and how they articulate and express things and how they support that even want to have the conversation to learn how like with women. So it's a it's a high hill for us to climb. But I think that for me, I think that's part of the reason why, at least from my perspective.
hmm.
Yeah, I generally struggle with the lack of emotional intelligence that men have. And it's just like, just because you don't have it, don't mean you can't get it, right? It's still a muscle that needs to be exercised. But it's something about, nope, that's not my conversation. And it's just like, I think that part I struggle with the most. So hearing how that could even influence the research you have seen, conversations that you were having in those sister circles, like I think it's bits and pieces that come into that because at the end of the day, this is all a part of a larger community. Like we all are in this culturally together. And I'm not saying that you have to stay within the bubble of your race or ethnic group, but just culturally, that's how we are as a community, and the fact that we, being men, want support, want these things, but again, generally speaking, are not willing to give it back or simply don't know how. It's such a strange divide. So I could only imagine some of the conversations that you heard in the studies and stuff that you've done.
So I think about I don't know if y'all saw that video with Nikki Giovanni when she was talking about like to Bald no, what is James Baldwin? She's like, you give the most to the white man and I get the least of you. I love you most and I get the least. He thinks you're happy with him because you come in there, you're grinning, you're smiling, it's yes, sir, whatever you need. Like you're so enthusiastic with him. And then you come home and I get the brunt of it. And so I feel like historically, like when you look, and I know people hate talking about history, but historically, Black women have had to just always do. And so I feel like Black people connect over their trauma. And I think that Black men want Black women to listen. But then when Black women are in their history and they're doing the things that they've always had to do, that's the reason you leave. So when you hear Black men and why they date white women, because Black women are this and they don't want you to lead and they don't want to do this. But when have we ever had the luxury to not? So it's like it's fine for you to like dwell in your trauma and your history, but when we're living in it and we just need you to understand, you up and leave. So that's just my personal opinion about it.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned something to the effect of like we just have to, we being Black women, right? So in that regard, you feel like you have to have the cape on.
Yeah.
And while I think Black women are superheroes, you don't always have to wear the cape or show the cape. But if black women are superheroes and that being you, what's your superpower?
Phew. Oh, that was deep. I wasn't expecting that.
Is it too early in the morning?
That's such a that's such a oddly response. And I know that Jazz hates this, but it's just so funny. Because why you take a deep breath? Why the question make you take a deep breath?
Yes, that is deep. I'm like, hold on now. Let me think. I think remaining calm in trying situations. I'm in an environment every day where people try me. Like, I'm like, if you would have caught me just a few years back, it would have been a different situation. But now I'm getting this PhD and all, so I'm trying to, be classy. But I really have tried to like remain stoic in times where I feel like I am dying inside. And I say it's like I'm wearing the mask. Like, how do I remain calm and think about all that people who came before me had to go through to, get me here and how they've had to wear that mask too. So I think that's like my biggest superpower, just remaining calm when the inside is going crazy. Yeah.
No,
That's a good superpower to have.
yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say that's real as hell. That's a great superpower. Before we end, I'm curious if you have any question for us. It could be, a question you want us to answer as it relates to appreciation of women. It could be a question about niggas ain't shit. I don't know. I don't know what questions you got
Maybe
for
we can talk
me.
about that.
I don't know how much of an answer I'm gonna have for you, but I mean, if it was something you wanted to ask us or that you want us to answer, given that we some articulate yappers, we can end the show on that. That might be the
Why
name.
do you
That might be the
think?
title of this episode, articulate yappers. Like that.
Boom, there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do you think these Negroes aren't shit? Like, why do you think this is a thing?
That's such a loaded question. I don't know. I don't. There's not one singular answer. Um, but in all honesty, my answer would probably go back to what I was saying in terms of you either they don't want to unlearn or they can't. Like it's that simple. And it starts to become, I think, where they can be considered to not be shit is a byproduct of what they are unwilling to face.
Hmm.
That's the general way I could put it. I can't get into the weeds of because there's too many different levels of not shit to get into the weeds of the why. So I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna use language and say they because this first I'm not gonna say we. I am shit. I'm not in that conversation. I can't relate. Uh, However, I think they have a problem with it because they lack critical thinking skills. Like that is a concern for me. I think that is the only deficit perspective thing I'm willing to say about the niggas ain't shit conversation because I don't want to say like, oh, this is how they were socialized or they weren't loved and they just didn't experience this. All of that is true. But if you rest there, you're done. Like you can talk about the cycle of socialization, but there's also the cycle of liberation. So at what point are you changing that around? So like we need some critical thinking skills across the community. And I love my brothers. Shout out to Angie Stone for brother. RIP. But I think that if they just thought a little bit more, because you can't tell me that you want. You got this girl that you just love her so much and you just expect the world from her. Something has to tell you, well, if she cares for me, I want to care for her the same. But it's some detours on the neural pathways up there. It's just not getting it. So yeah, the lack of critical thinking is why they ain't shit.
Why do you think it's black men? Like, I feel like our relationships with black people are just so plagued with just dumb shit. Like, why are we the only people talking about 50-50? Why? There's so many other things that matter more. Like, Why is this a concern for Black communities? What are y'all's thoughts on that?
I think there's an aspect, I think that the Black community, because I hate the 50-50 conversation on both ends, not just as a man and what like is expected, but like I just hate the idea that there isn't a lot in life that's 50-50, my dog. So I don't know why the expectation that a relationship of all things would be, you know what I mean? So, but I think for our community, it's not what we've been taught, but it's also a lot of what we've seen. So like you have what you were raised by or what you were raised in, but then you have what you've seen as you've grown up and as you've evolved, hopefully as a person. And so you get to this point where you feel like I'm supposed to get this because this is what I see. I see these type of relationships. I see this person getting this. I see this man doing this for her. I see this woman doing this for him. And that's what we start to want our relationships to look like what we see versus like creating the vision for our own relationships. So I think that's why the 50-50 discussions and the other things that plague us have the role that they have because we I don't know. Yeah, we struggle with understanding that this is still a business. Like it was not a business, but like there is a transactional aspect to relationships. That's just a part of it. You don't have to live in that. That doesn't have to lead it, but it's there. And either to act like it's not there or to just dwell in that solely, I think also plagues us.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the 50-50, and I'm gonna get on my soapbox for a second. My experience is DEI, right? So I feel like the conversation is equity versus equality. People coming into relationships talking about 50-50 because I need to give my part and you give your part, and that's equality, right? That we have to give the same equal half in order for this partnership to work. Where some days, if we talk in a partnership, I'm 99, you 1%. That's equity, right? It's what I have to give for us to be at the like kind of same starting point. And sometimes you gonna give more than I'm gonna be able to give. But to say like, oh no, it's 50-50. I mean, in theory, yes, that works because you're saying I'm bringing something to the table and you bringing something to the table, but it don't have to be the same amount. It shouldn't be the same amount because if we're looking at a basketball game, we don't have we don't have the five players on the court saying, I'm gonna get 10 points. Everybody, we getting 10 points today, and we're gonna hope that we can win with those 10 points. No, you got some people, they may just get 5 points in the game. You got some people may get 23 points in the game, right? And it's all gonna end up being the collective win. We don't look at relationships the same way.
Yeah.
So it's an equity and equality conversation for me.
Yeah, you ate that. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I don't really have a rebuttal. I mean, that was quality.
We
I
know
would
what
say
we're talking about sometime. We know what we're talking about sometime.
I really do. This has been such an enriching conversation. I also want to know, like, from your perspective, because we talked about what Black women have to give. What do you guys feel like as Black men you have to give or is expected of you? And how can we maybe support you guys more?
Now you came in at the buzzer trying to cook. I'll see what's going on here. Okay, all right, flipping the table. Okay. Uh oh man. I think I kind of struggle with this because I think the relationship that a lot of men have with it can be negative, again, just based on how it's been taught to us. But I think we are expected to provide so much and not solely like just financially, but we are expected to provide stability. We are expected to provide comfort. And I'm saying these things, and it's not that it is something that we shouldn't want to provide, but I think sometimes the pressure and the weight of providing it in times when it doesn't always feel appreciated, from our end, it doesn't feel appreciated. I think that's when it starts to weigh more heavily or like weigh in a negative fashion versus it just being part of our responsibility. Um, yeah, and I think the expectation versus responsibility is for me kind of where it where the difference is made. Like, because I can have a sense of responsibility in what I want to bring to the table, what I want to provide. But when we talk about what's expected of me, depending on what that relationship is, what the reciprocity is, I think that's where it starts to feel like a weight I'm carrying versus this sense of purpose. But I feel like that's at least what I've heard and what I feel like a lot of men will boil it down to is just the sense of how much we're supposed to provide, but not necessarily receive back in some way, form, or fashion. Is the best way I can articulate it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I feel like it's gonna sound bad to say out loud. I feel like the understanding or the expectation is that women want everything from us. They don't need everything from us, right? But even for my strong, independent black women that's out there, they still want to be kept, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But we do too. We don't articulate it that and say it that way, but we do too. So I think that in the relationship, if we talking black man to black woman, like we should both be able to be little spoons with each other, right? And I don't think that that energy is always there. So it's just like this idea, like, my man, my man, my man. Like he take care of me in multiple ways. And again, there's nothing wrong with that because y'all don't need us. Y'all want us around, right? But then we don't get that same, I don't think, in return. But I think it's because some men don't present it that way. So I'm not putting the blame on women. I'm saying I see that dynamic break down.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you say that point though, because I was starting to think about like rom-coms or like just love movies. And you always see like the white girls like get the fairy tale ending. And they have like the biggest issue in a white love story is like they moved away. But like black love, it's like you getting dogged out, you getting cheated on, he ain't got this, you ain't got that. And I'm like, when you think about being kept, I feel like you associate that with whiteness. I feel like with black women, it's like gold digging and you like all you want me for is my money, and I'm not finna trick off on nobody. But like white women are kept.
Mhm.
I thought that was such an interesting point, and where my brain kind of went with that. That was interesting. Yeah.
So that separation and difference of of white rom coms and black rom coms is absolutely true. Because them white rom coms, it don't be no trauma in there. Like you said, they done moved away. They done somebody took a job. Like it don't. They can fix it with a conversation. Meanwhile, and all the black rom coms, they got to go through so much hell. Insecure, we saw goddamn Lawrence not have a job, go through all this stuff before they had their fairy tale, and it took 5 seasons and shit before they finally got it together. But I don't like that trauma is embedded into our black rom coms like that. It ain't we don't that don't got to be our truth, at least not out loud. Goddamn, have some coof, some respect.
We just trying to do good things.
You always bring it full circle. And
Is
you're
the teacher.
colorful while you do it. Look, and you're colorful while you do it.
See, there we go.
All right. Well, we're gonna stop yapping in y'all face this morning. But Jazz, it was so great having you on. Thank you for coming on and being she's our first woman guest, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, yes, and also our first guest of 2025. So
Hey, what?
How they be getting down in Connecticut, man. I'm trying to tell you, that's how they be getting down.
Right, hey, Connecticut on the map, okay?
Don't play. Well, until next week, until the next episode, we'll catch y'all next time. Peace.